Oh, last night go there. Last night I had a family chasana.
Yeah. Rabbi, are you gonna fly up to the Wednesday?
Yeah, Mr.
Are you gonna go on Wednesday and come back to the office?
We go on Thursday.
Oh, really? Right to the day of the one.
Yeah.
And then are you gonna stay the night there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it? Okay, gentlemen. As I recall it, where are we up to?
Like the fourth line.
Oh, does it? Now that is it, right?
Yeah.
Good. You missed a couple of classes. Have a chance to listen to it or review it?
I didn't have a chance.
Please borrow this thing and see if you can listen to it, okay? Important stuff.
So where are we?
We are on page 172, at the end of the fourth line. The Rebbe explains Mitzrayim and eventually Yitzias Mitzrayim, how that is 172. Why? Yeah, remember Gamba Nachtarte? I'll show you where you were. Yeah. That Mitzrayim, the Rebbe explains, is the principle where the seichel is so small, it's meitzer. Meitzer means he's so imprisoned, so contained, that despite of the fact that one understands clearly a principle, a godly principle, and he clearly understands that this is the truth and this is the right thing and so forth, and yet that does not provide him with the strength to actually follow through and act accordingly. Normally a person should be able to act in consort with his intellect. It's almost like one figures out that the correct route to take from here to 770 is to go through these various streets. But he takes a different route. Why is he taking a different route? Because by osmosis, he feels more comfortable in the other route. Logically, he saw on the map, and he knows clearly this is the best route. But yet, he follows a route that he feels more comfortable with. Why doesn't his mind tell him, no, go the right way? Because knowing and that this is the right way that it does not have a sense of reality to it. It's like a theoretical thing. And he's afraid to take a different route than he is used to, for instance. Even though he knows clearly this is the right thing. So his seichel is nowhere near the sense of reality that he has from just the habit of what he's used to, of what it appears to him. This means that his mind does not present and does not function, so to speak, with its full capacity.
Fullness, capacity.
Full power, full force. Okay, we'll still come back to this, but this is a very important thing to understand. So the Rebbe gave a mashal from the Ganav, Emunah. Emunah, every person has Emunah. Because Emunah does not directly impact, does not directly affect one's practical living, life. Something hidden someplace in his mind, almost like on a theoretical level. And this is what we see from a Ganav. That a Ganav who is going to steal, he goes and asks Hashem to help him in his theft, which is just an illogical, an irrational thing to do. Totally irrational. And yet it doesn't strike him, because that which he has in his mind is just too vague and too unreal. Almost like a child. You know that a child that's very curious or whatever, if you see that child is coming close to a stove, and you're afraid that the child shouldn't get hurt as a shalom, so you tell the child, don't go there, it's very hot and you can get hurt. And the child hears you, and that does not guarantee at all that he's not going to try and touch it. And the only way to get through it, many times you have to actually touch his hand to the stove and let him feel it and cry, but he'll know that this is really hurting. In other words, that which he is told and he knows in his seichel is not convincing enough that he should actually abstain from it. Not because he's doubting what you're saying, but because he doesn't have the power to direct his life. The stove is much too enticing for him not to go and touch it just because he knows that he can get burnt.
This hardness of making is this the same concept as in other Magura Veda or Newton's Peru Shtos? In Peru Shtos, is it the same thing?
The Ruach Shtus is not the same thing, but it's related in that if one does not have this Katan Samechen, then the Ruach Shtus will not be able to affect him. Here we're talking about the Ruach Shtus is that which fools him. He becomes a fool. He actually tells himself that nothing is going to happen. That's a Ruach Shtus. He convinces himself that nothing is going to happen. No, that it's not going to affect his Yiddishkeit, it's not going to affect who he is, and so forth. That's a Ruach Shtus.
But when you tell a child, don't touch the stove because it's hot, the child says, yeah, I know, I hear what you're saying, but well, so then why does he touch the stove? Because for some reason, he thinks that being the case, he's going to be able to touch it and he's not going to get burned.
No.
No?
Of course
He just
not.
wants to know what it feels like to get burned.
Yeah, no. He's just curious to feel how the stove feels, like a kid. His temptation to touch the stove is just greater than the power of his mind that tells him don't touch it.
So why is that different than a person that he knows that he's not supposed to do because the Abishter says don't do it, it's not going to be good for you. And he knows and he believes in the Abishter and he knows that this is emes. And nevertheless, he's compelled just to touch whatever it is that he wants to touch. He's just curious. He just wants to see. So what's the difference between the two? And according to that explanation, it seems like the person that doesn't obey it, he also knows that he's going to get burned, so to speak.
Okay. They're related, but I want to clarify to you they're not the same thing. A Ruach Shtus is you were told don't touch the stove because it's hot, and the Ruach Shtus comes and tells you this is not a stove. You were talking about that stove. This is not a stove. Shtus means folly, stupidity. I mean, if he had a strong mind, then foolish arguments would not be able to sway him. But we're talking here about something different. We're not talking about that he's being fooled that this is not a stove, or this is not a wrong thing to do. He can't contain his impulse to do it. Normally a person is supposed to follow his mind. He can't control his impulse to do it. And he knows while he's doing it that he shouldn't be doing it. But his mind is just not strong enough to control the impulse. Why is it not strong enough? And what's the strength that's required? The strength that's required is that he should recognize the reality of that which he understands in his mind.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Okay. This is a moshel for this, but not exactly. Again, I'll have to show the difference. If you read about or you hear about some phenomenon, some natural phenomenon, someone describes to you the Niagara Falls. Years ago, I spoke about this over here. I don't know if it's before your time. Someone describes to you the Niagara Falls. And it describes to you how the water runs, all the details, and how much water falls down, millions of gallons a minute, or whatever it is. It's the whole phenomenon. And you know exactly what happens. Then you go and you see it for yourself. When you see it for yourself, you have a completely different impression and effect. It still has a full effect as if you never saw it, never heard about it. your previous knowledge does not diminish at all the effect of seeing it. Right? As a matter of fact, even after you see it, you want to see it again, because it's such an impressive phenomenon. So there, it is difference between what you have in Seichel and what you see. And clearly, sight gives you the reality of it, and there's no comparison. But what this illustrates to you, that there is such thing as knowing something, and yet it does not impress on you its reality. So similarly, knowing Elokus and reflecting on it and really understanding it does not impress the person. See, I'm careful to say it does not impress you, because does not impress him that he should actually abstain from doing something that is contrary to Elokus. Why? Because it's not real. It's not as real as this impulse. Why is it not real? Relative to this impulse, the impulse is an impulse. It's not something that he's impelled to do it, just like, sight. This is not sight. This is, nothing is forcing him to do it. This is a desire and this is desire. Because his seichel is literally imprisoned. He does not come forth completely. He does not allow himself to relate to that which he understands as a full-fledged reality. That which he understands is a nice, very nice thought. Good idea. But that this is the reality that's going to guide his life, it's a completely different thing. This is a type of prison. It's being held back by something. What's holding it back? The Nefesh Abamis. The coarseness and the reality of the Nefesh Abamis does not allow one to relate as a reality to his intellectual, to his intellect. So this is the Ruach Shtus. Ruach Shtus is another Indian. It's possibly the weakness of the Seichel itself.
So, right.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Since we're seeing it so clearly that it's mamash, almost something that is a mitzvah. It's not only it's real. I mean, the soul, the intellect really is too weak to affect. Like we are in prison. So apparently, unless like we couldn't be blamed not to be able to control it if it's a real prison. Like, how many people that don't even know that it is? So how can we follow his intellect?
Okay, so the answer to that will come around as we learn. But the first thing is, the aim of understanding this is not to find blame. Blame is not the objective over here. The objective is what to do about it. Nobody is blaming anyone.
Is it correct to say that this, which we're talking about, the Matza, this is more, if you say like, this is a lacking on the part of his like intellectual ability, but lacking on the part of the Moichin, rather, where the Ruach Shtus is actually like an oppositional force, that which opposes. And the Matza is this a lacking?
It's a lacking because it's being locked in by the Nefesh Abamis. Just like a prison. person is in prison, he doesn't appreciate the outside world. Of course he appreciates. Why doesn't he go? He can't get out.
It's like drugs.
I'm sorry?
Scary.
Like drugs, Lahav. Like drugs, Lahav.
Drugs.
Have the $1 billion, but
Right.
it's like they know that it's big by appetite, they do it anyway because they can't help.
See, there it's, Rahman Islam, that's beyond the norm. You're talking about a simple, a normal process. There it's beyond the norm. Maybe we'll have a chance maybe to touch on it. It's it's a sickness. You're talking about a normal thing, but it's mamish becomes a sickness. An addiction is like a sickness.
Mental sickness.
Yeah. I mean, mental sickness. It's a different type of situation.
Isn't it like a spiritual sickness?
His drawing to these drugs, Rahman Islam, is not on a normal level. A person wants to eat an apple. One person wants it more, one person likes it less, one person is able to contain himself. But there is a limit to his desire. Addiction means there's no limit to his desire.
There is. This is very far away.
Well,
The limit is very extreme. Limit.
The extreme limit is to such an extent that no way will be able to get out by himself. He has to have outside help. Huh? Usually,
A
huh?
lot of people get off by themselves.
Yeah, but if they get by themselves, they were not fully addicted.
Huh?
Okay?
I got
I
it.
got it. Okay, so similar to the moshel of the Ganef, who be his bonus, behind his bonus are nefesh olikis. The situation with his bonus of the nefesh olikis. His bonus, we spoke many times, means reflection, which means it is not just merely trying to figure something out, to understand. But his bonus, the difference is like this. While one is trying to understand something, even though, let's say you're learning something in a mimer, you know clearly that every word that's in the mimer is true. The Rebbe says it. Nevertheless, while you're learning it, what is the process of learning? The process of learning is it so or is it not so? That's the process of learning. And you are finding arguments that say, yes, it is so. And then you have a question. And what does the question do? It seems to me maybe it's not so. Not because I'm doubting the Rebbe's word, but because in my mind I don't have the clarity that this is so. And that's a process of learning. It's a perfectly legitimate process, way to learn. You have the right to ask every question. You're not the right. You must ask every question that comes up to your mind. Otherwise, you'll be fooling yourself in terms of understanding it. So in other words, the process of understanding is constantly doubting, questioning. While you're talking about questioning, it cannot be convincing if you're not so sure in your own mind how it is. So clearly that cannot have any effect on the person. But his boinanus is a step beyond that. This is when he already have come to the conclusion. And now he's reflecting upon it and trying to explain it to himself. Meaning he's trying to convince himself. He knows already what the right thing is. But now, like we're going to say in the next couple of words, Hagam shemevair u'masbir nefesh habamis, kama inyonim asogas olakus. He's explaining to the nefesh habamis various aspects that are brought out by hasogas olakus, by comprehension of olakus. And he is able to point out to Nefesh Habahamis, showing the Nefesh Habahamis. You see, on the basis of these points and these arguments, this is Holocaust. So he's able to really point out and see it.
But you should explain to her Holocaust is good for you, yeah? The Nefesh Habahamis.
This is Alakus is good. Is a different. Again, it's a different phase, a different step in it. Alakus is good for the purpose of having the Nefesh Habahamis actually say, not only do I agree with you, but I want it. Alakus is good. I want it. We're not talking about the Nefesh Habahamis wanting it. What we're talking about, the Nefesh Habahamis stepping aside, saying, hey, you're right.
So it's not
I
like
can-
I should feeling about this.
Right.
Just explain it.
Just explain to him, right. Don't do this thing because this is contrary to it. We're not talking about desiring Alakus. Alakus is good, you should want it. Instead of wanting your tyrus, you should want Alakus. That's another phase completely. But just on the more basic level. He's mevayed to Nefesh Habahamis, kam yom asogis Alakus, שהנפש הבאמיס על ידי נפש השכליס, where the nefesh habahamis, as a result, and by using the, so to speak, the proper properties of the nefesh hasichlis, mevinom betoiv. I'll come back in a minute, try to identify nefesh habahamis versus nefesh hasichlis. Mevinom betoiv, understands them well, umaskim alayim, and he agrees. He agrees that what you just now said makes sense, and it's right. I can agree with you. That's maskim alayim. Let's for a moment try to understand the nefesh habahamis versus the nefesh hasichlis. What does this mean, nefesh hasichlis? The Alter Rebbe says that there are two nefoshes, not three nefoshes. All of a sudden there's a nefesh hasichlis. Sometimes we call it nefesh hachiyunis. A fourth nefesh. Basically, there are two nefoshes. The nefesh olekis and nefesh habahamis. The word nefesh means want, desire. Nefesh means lashon rotzen, comes from word, is related to the word rotzen. Im yeshes nafshechem, if you want. We have learned in the previous Maimer, the inyan harotzoin, that rotzoin is an inherent reflection of nefesh. That he wants something not on the basis of reason, but because he identifies with this thing directly. Nefesh Elokis identifies with Elokus. Nefesh Habahamis identifies with Inyanim from the world.
What is this identity?
He relates to. He feels closeness, like a relative. You know, he feels related to it. He feels at home. He feels at home in the world, and he appreciates worldly things. Absolutely, kids appreciates only godly things. So this is Rotze. You with me, David?
I'm with you.
So, the nefesh Abraham it's Adam that it's a behemoth, and it's a nefesh, which means that essentially we're talking about an entity in the person that is inclined, that wants wants worldly things. He wants worldly things. He wants nice clothes, he wants special foods, he wants comfort, he wants wealth. We're not talking about somebody who needs money to pay the rent. I'm talking about anything in the world that, you know, enriches his worldly place, his place in the world. That's what he wants. What makes him feel good? He has a lot of money. He feels good. Not because of the use of the money, but because having the money itself gives him a pleasure. He's part of the world. He can buy whatever he wants. He can go any place he wants. He can relate to, so to speak, to the richness what the world can afford. I'm sorry?
This is just due to his natural Shabbat.
Yeah. The more worldly it is, the more worldliness he has, the more comfortable he is. He feels satisfied. Like the halacha is that a behema, you know, a behema is not allowed to do work on Shabbos. Apidin, you're not allowed to let your behema do work on Shabbos. The posuk in the Torah. Man yanuah sheikha v'chameiracha. Also, they have to be rested. So now the question is, you are being not allowed to tear grass from the ground on Shabbos. That's koitzer. It's allowed. It's a misa skillet to tear grass from the ground. A behema, that's what it does the whole day. When it's not working, what does it do? It's grazing. So can you allow the behema to tear the grass? It's a yisur. It's a whole halacha, the whole that you know, what things are you allowed to put on a behema when you walk out in the Rosh Hashanah? A piece, any string that's attached to the behema that is not directly for the sake and for the use of the behema, for the safety of the behema, is also you're allowed to let it to put on a behema on Shabbos. Because he's carrying a load that's on Shabbos in Rosh Hashanah. So, are you allowed to let the behema graze on Shabbos? The answer is yes. Because the Torah says that the behema has to rest. A behema without grazing is not a nayach. This is its thing, to graze. He would sit for a whole day, never stop. Doesn't have to interrupt. Sits and eats grass. That's what a behemoth's occupation is. Nefesh Abahamis of a human being is a little smaller than that. He doesn't want grass. He wants a happy steak. But that's what he wants. Basically, it's some worldly experience. That's what is this is what he craves. Okay?
You're talking straight to me.
I'm talking straight to me. How do you think I know it? Didn't I? I didn't.
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay. Now there is since this is a nefesh abamis of a human being, and a human being was imbued, was blessed with seichel. Now seichel and nefesh abamis kind of don't go together. Nefesh abamis wants to enjoy himself. Seichel is kind of being detached from himself, being involved in something else but himself. And this is what we say, that despite the fact that this is a nefesh abamis, the quality, the blessing that Hashem gave us, this seichel, is that this nefesh abamis has a particular interest, a nefesh, in seichel. Just as the nefesh abamis can enjoy a steak, he can enjoy also to learn something. It's not just, and that's why he's a nefesh abamis of a human being. That is called nefesh hasichlis. What's nefesh hasichlis? This is part of nefesh abamis. But this is the upper part of nefesh abamis, where he actually enjoys seichel. That's his experience in the world. Sichli. So the nefesh hasichlis, this is the finer and the so to speak, the refined part of nefesh abamis, where he's able to study and to learn something that does not have to do with his stomach or with his palate or with his smell, just to understand the way it is. And the nefesh hasichlis, this is the opening. This is the point of contact between the nefesh ho'elokis and the nefesh abamis. The nefesh ho'elokis doesn't want itself at all. It's not interested in its own satisfaction, its own experience. Nefesh ho'elokis only knows the elokus. That's the only thing that it recognizes. Not even for itself, just elokus. Nefesh abamis only knows itself. Then there is this point of contact, the nefesh hasichlis, that he is able to dissociate, break away for a moment from himself, and try to understand the way it is. Just this is called objectively, intellectual objectivity. Able to understand it. So now, the nefesh ho'elokis is utilizing this conduit, this facility, and is explaining to the nefesh hasichlis, look, I'll be seichel, not because I believe it, not because I feel it and I know it, no. I'll be seichel. Your seichel should be able to understand that the world did not make itself, and that God made the world. You should be able to understand that. And you should be able to understand that God did not make the world in vain. That God did not make the world in order that you should be able to eat steak. That cannot be the purpose. Your seichel should be able to understand it. And the nefesh hasichlis says, you sound right. Then he goes back to the nefesh abamis and says, you know what I just learned? That eating steak is not the real purpose of life. Right? The Rabbi says, that's interesting, but steak is very good.
Yeah. Let me go eat steak.
true that it's not a purpose in life. All this is not purpose in life, to eat or to. But like right now I was thinking, like all the people that they are not in Torah mitzvahs, they don't say that's the purpose of life. They know that that's not the purpose of life. They just don't care about purpose. Basically, they live in a world that doesn't have a purpose at all. They just care about passing a good time here, and that's all they care. So how can knowing that it's not the purpose in life is going to change the person if it's a person that doesn't want purpose? Because I have met people that people want.
Well, what happens
things
is,
are wrong.
for a bar seichel, if he says, we recognize that this which I am occupied with is not the purpose of life, and he's a bar seichel, and he says, okay, I submit that this is not the purpose of life, and therefore, he has two choices. One is, therefore there's no purpose, or tell me what the purpose is. A Baal Seichel says no purpose. What kind of life is it? How can you be an intelligent being without a purpose? You're right. The Nefesh HaBamis on its own is not interested. But the Nefesh HaSichlis tells him, it's not life. And after the Nefesh HaSichlis explains that to him, the Nefesh HaBamis says, sounds good, but this tastes better. And he is satisfied with just the taste. After all that explanation, which means he hasn't been reached, which means that this whole understanding has not been presented in reality enough that it should shake him out of his brain. Okay? So that's what it says here. Nefesh HaBamis, Adei Nefesh HaSichlis Mevinom B'toiv understands well those in Yonim that the Nefesh HaLikis is explaining to him. Umaskim Aleihem. And he has no problem with it. He agrees with it. Omnom, and yet, however, Zehu Mitzad HaSeichel Bilvad. This is only at the level of the Seichel. The Seichel, in Seichel he understands. In other words, theoretically I agree with you. Aval im zeh, but despite that, Einoi Poyel Hazoza. It does not create, it doesn't have the effect of a Hazoza. Hazoza means a shake-up, a move. Lotzeis mirgilusoi, to step out from his habit and to change his path in life. And this is actually something that we can actually observe Bemuchos. Bemuchos means with our senses, almost. We can actually sense that this is the reality. B'tivei b'nei Yodam. B'tivei b'nei Yodam, in the natures of men. Hanimshochim b'inyonehem, that are drawn, Hanimshochim, that are drawn b'inyonehem, in all of their important aspects of life, in their inyonim, acharei hakrirus ve'anochas ha'elam. They follow the krirus, the coldness of hanochas ha'elam, of the principles and the establishment in the world. Let me explain these words for a moment and then we'll go in there. I want to give you a little illustration from something, from a broader perspective. Let's imagine the following situation. And this is not, by us it's an imagination, but actually this is something which transpired in the world, actually happened. For thousands of years, people used a horse and buggy to travel. Right? And over the years, to whatever degree possible, the buggies were improved over the years and made them more comfortable. They made the wheels spin more easily, and sometimes they put rubber shoes on the wheels. It became a softer ride, a more comfortable ride. There were improvements as the years went on, and in order to produce these fancier royal wagons, they had developed, big factories, establishments that are able to produce the best wagon wheels, right? And then came a car. So saying, what's a car? A car can travel much faster and never gets tired. And it gives you a much better ride, much softer ride. Wait a second. What's going to be with my factory? What do you need a factory for? You have a car. We need a factory for a wagon, for a wagon wheel. No, this is too good a thing to lose. Look what kind of machinery there is. Look what it can do. It can produce these huge 6-foot wheels. The car doesn't even have a 6-foot wheel. It only has a little 2.5-foot wheel. You follow the idea? In other words, the reality, or the physical reality, blinds his intellect. The truth is that any factory, anything in the world that has a capability of producing whatever it is, its value is only to the extent that it's useful. Once it loses its usefulness, then it's valueless. In the business world, you have engineers and all kinds of different smart people, and they build and they innovate and so forth, and then with a tremendous amount of effort and capital, and then it turns out that it doesn't sell in the market. So what happens to all that? It gets scrapped into scrap metal. But how can you do it? There's so much wisdom went into this, but it's useless. Right? This is in the simple worldly terms. The similar inyan exists in simple human behavior. The word krirus ha'anochas ha'elam, krirus, why is it called krirus? Krirus means coldness. What is the principle of coldness? Coldness means that it does not need to have a purpose. It needs to have a presence. A purpose gives it warmth, gives it a sense. What's a purpose? A purpose means what human beings are going to be using it for. What does it do for you? Coldness is lifeless, which means that here's the thing, Hanochas Olam means worldly habits, established principles in the world that serve no purpose whatsoever, which means they don't have any sense of life in it. Why then are they maintained? Because that's part of the establishment of the world. That exists. Give you an example. In Britain, there is what's called a tea hour.
Tea. Come in for tea.
Oh, you see that? That's perfect. What's a tea hour? At the strike of 4, on a daily basis, at the strike of 4, you have to change your clothes and come in with a special garment for the tea hour.
Tea time.
And you have to sit around, I don't have any more details, but something of that nature. And if you do that, then you have done a human act. And if you don't do that, then you're not a gentleman. Something is missing in your human quality. Now this is totally without life. It's just clear. They're doing this for hundreds of years. I don't know how long. And they're just really imitating each day what they did yesterday, what they did yesterday. There's absolutely there's nothing to it. There's nothing to innovate. There's nothing there.
That's why they founded this country. Get away from that.
Some of it, right?
British gentlemen. Well, they claim it's like you know, don't just do whatever you want whenever you want. You have to control yourself. A British gentleman.
The idea is simply this. In order that I should be able to think of myself as a real presence in the world, I have to have certain rigidity. I cannot be fully fluid. If I'm fluid, then I'm not really established. Like, a house that's fluid doesn't stand. Right? A house has to be founded deep down in the ground. A human being has to be at least as solid as a house. Right? It couldn't be fluid in everything. So a human being has to do things in a certain precise time and precise moment. I mean, when the British are making fun of the British, you talk about the Germans. I mean, they're totally lifeless.
Machines.
So these are extremes, but the fact is that this exists really almost universally in different ways. There are certain things that have to be done, and that gives you, so to speak, it establishes your solid presence in the world, although it really has no practical, no real reason, no real purpose. This is called klirus hanochas olam. But they become so solid that no matter what reasoning you present, I agree with you, but how can you not go to tea? I think I once told you this episode that happens by me in my office. I was working in an office for many years, and there was this gentleman. There were a lot of Frumayidim there. This gentleman was a Frumayid, not a very big lump, but a Frumayid. He used to come in to me all the time, give me karats from the New York Times. He was a big fan of the New York Times. I once thought that he was a fan of the New York Times because of the wisdom that they presented. So I found out that nothing of that. He was just touched by the fluid language. Some of William Safire and some of the writers that write very well. Makes no difference what they write. He was totally disinterested. It's just, isn't that quite an article? Okay, but it took me some time to realize this. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, he used to come to me with Karatz. Read this, Abba. Read this. Okay. So one time I was standing in my office, and he came up to me. He says, "Abba, did you see that? Did you see that program last night?" I said, "I don't have a television." "You don't have a television?"
How can you be a human being?
I don't.
Primitive.
Okay. I don't have a television. Then we continued to discuss something. Then after this kind of got in a back burner, I said to him, "Do you think television is a good thing?" Just out of the blue. He said, it's terrible. It's terrible. Waste your time. It's terrible. So I said, "So why don't you throw it out the window?" You can't do that. I can even it out.
Possibly through it. Possibly through it.
That's Kridus was a human being, not an animal that's instinctive. A human being is supposed to act according to his seichel, not by instinct. And here he is giving up his seichel, his his ability to choose, and is being controlled by Kridus, by a lifeless principle. To the extent that, it's terrible. Oh no, I can't give it up. He's given up the principle, the privileges that human beings were given by God Himself. You could choose. He's given it up.
That's called coldness?
Coldness, lifelessness. There's no.
You can't. It's like you can't give it up, but you know it's wrong.
No, the whole. Right. The whole thing that you're talking about. What are you bound up by? You're bound by something that is lifeless. It just puts you in a straitjacket. It's coldness. It just says this is how it has to be, but not because not on any basis that is called that is humanly supported by human intellect or even emotion. Nothing. It's a terrible thing.
It's like cultural norms.
Cultural norms. This is all clear on the because there's nothing cultural about drinking tea in a special jacket and a special tie at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's nothing to it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do away with that on a broad scale, I mean, you basically take away like all of the culture of the world, and it's basically all there is out there. I mean, besides a little bit of derek arrows, and that's basically all you have.
So, okay,
lives.
I'll tell you something. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
No, I'm not arguing that point. It just seems like if you want to look at the history of the world and the diversity of culture and everything, it's basically all based on.
No, I'll tell you something. As long as the culture is under human control, so somehow, saying, okay, it's cultural, and I realize it's cultural, and I understand what it signifies. There's some kind of a human dignity involved. So then it's being fed by some kind of a human quality. But once it loses it, it becomes completely cold. It's just, this is what it has to be. There's nothing to do with culture. This is really a dead culture. Let's make it very simple. indoor canalization.
Indoor.
What?
Canalization, nobody knows what that means.
No idea what that means.
I don't know.
That means running water and shower and facilities, all that. There used to be, the outhouse,
Yeah.
right?
I'm not following, right?
Back in the day, we used to go outside.
Indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing,
These days, we don't have to go outside.
Okay.
right?
The problem is, yes.
Plumbing.
Okay. If somebody decides, no, he's not going to have indoor canalization, he's going to have an outhouse and he's going to wash himself in the river, whatever it is, you'd say, well, he's backward. Yeah, he's uncultured. But this is not a culture. You're doing it because that's cultural. Human culture, which means human development, human intellect, has devised things that are more human. They serve the human being much better. They provide for the human being a much better environment to live in, so that he can do other things that are human. So you can call that culture. It is culture. Culture does not mean something that rigid. Culture means something that develops as a result of human development. And it's all done for the purpose of allowing the human being to function more like a human being. So this is culture. This is the real culture. This is the word of its name. But culture that is lifeless and doesn't serve anything, this is, like I said before, it's dead culture. This is totally useless and totally counterproductive. That human being literally has given up his human quality, his human choice power. I mean, we say people have to walk with shoes, not barefoot. That's culture. That's also developed over years as a human culture. But it's not culture for the sake of culture.
But that's someone should buy a pair of shoes which cost $400 because of the name on the shoes.
Oh, that's the shtus. That's what we're talking about.
So you could say, that means
That's right. You buy a pair of pants, and the big label, Levi, is on the pants, and you pay $200 for that because of the label. That's
fashion.
shtus. That's shtus. That doesn't serve the human being at all.
That's what is it? Use.
Yeah.
It's just,
Okay.
Why are you doing it? Because this is, people say if you want
Fashion is
to look good, you
absolutely
have to put on. You have to. Your pants have to.
You don't have to look good. It's nothing to do with looking good. If you
Oh, what you
if
think
you
what
want
they
them,
wear?
okay, we'll discuss it
What
maybe
they
when we
wear
come to it.
today, you
Okay,
would
so
have
that
thought 10
doesn't
years ago.
negate culture at all. You said it negates all culture. It doesn't. All this is culture. To wear shoes and to wear proper clothing, comfortable clothing, this is all cultural. It took many, many years before people developed all that. But it's not culture for the sake of culture. It's culture for the sake of facilitating a human being to live like a human being. Yes, Mish.
I have a question. All this idea of virus, we differentiated that all this union of the intellect not being able to affect for real is not about Ruach it's a different union. So
He's right.
yeah, so
Empowerless.
the question that I have, all this union of virus, more than seeming to be like drawing to tyrants or whatever, it sounds more like fear of changing an habit, like people somehow, because they notice, like for example the tea hour, like somehow they feel this is my whole life. If I take this out, even if it doesn't have any meaning, then like the fear of changing, like you don't want to change all, even if it's completely empty, but it doesn't seem that it draws them, like it's more by way of not knowing what else could be if not this than by doing actually what they're doing.
Well,
'Cause
I'm sure there is that too, but it's not only that. Because if that were the only thing, then okay, sit, have your parliament sitting and decide what we're going to substitute for the tea hour, something more meaningful. You're not going to stick to something meaningless just because you don't have an alternative. You didn't figure out an alternative. There has to be an alternative that's meaningful. You're a human being.
Well, it's completely meaningless. I don't know anything about it, but if every single person there does it, like there is some reason why they do it, no? It's not like,
Yeah,
like some
of course there is. Of course there is. Because that gives him the title of a British gentleman. What would you give to get such a title?
British businessmen do this. British businessmen waste their
All
time.
British people.
I don't know. That I don't know. This many details I don't know.
Yes, we're going to have a tea party.
No, it's important. It says, so it says, Prirus da hanochas ho'elam. This is poshet nothing. And this nothingness, a person cannot break through it. As much as he explains to himself. Why? Why can't I break away? This is my seichel. And his seichel doesn't have the capacity to break through. So you're talking about the British, we're talking about ourselves.
Yeah,
You say, like,
that's
this is-
very harsh.
It's like can you say like the very extreme of this would be a case of like a person like obsessive compulsive, that he's like completely ritualized his entire day. Like, and now these 5 minutes I do this, and I do this way, and I do this way, and you're gonna ask him like, well, why are you doing it? It's like, I don't know, and you can say like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, I agree with you, it doesn't make any sense, but yet I can't break. I have to keep this habit. This I have to do now, and this I have to do in this way, and this now these 5 minutes I have to, whatever it is. You know, like people, they have these sickness, like they completely ritualize every
Right,
aspect.
right. See, the thing is, that's I'm important. We're not talking about someone who is spiritually and intellectually not well. Talking about somebody who really is quite well, and he can break or not do it, and he won't feel utter loss. But he cannot bring himself to break it. Hanoches mean. Hanoches means
To be led, isn't it?
no. Hanoches means establishment. Something that's established, pre-established in his mind. This is the way it has to be. This is the reality. This is the right thing. Hanoches. Huh? Stubborn yeke. Hanoches is almost like an intellectual thing. His intellect tells him this is the way it has to be. That's right.
But it seems like it's justifying Matza at that point.
Right.
So messed up.
All right, gentlemen.
My grandfather said yes. Thank God, and that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
I will not argue with you anymore.
I'm sorry?
No, my grandmother's British.
Bobby went
my
to the doctor.
grandfather's
Yes,
German.
why? I don't know. When I was there, she hasn't come back yet. Okay? Okay, I'm going back to Far Rockaway now. Hello?